All right, Mark. What I want to do is talk a little bit about, and you already described it yourself as depression.
Yeah.
And so we spoke a little bit on the phone and a little bit coming in here today, but I wanted to give some time to just kind of strain it out a little bit more, understand a little bit where you're coming from, understand some of your thoughts and feelings, and just kind of go from there.
Sure, that's good. I guess one of the best places to start is just that, I don't know, things have just been really tough lately. It kind of seems like it takes a little bit more effort to do things. It's kind of harder for me to get things done around the house or at work. I mean, I just came from work and it just doesn't feel as good. Going in the morning, I find kind of that urge or desire to wake up isn't really there as much. And so it just, I don't know, I can't really describe it too well, and I think it's just kind of tough to put on because it's just a rut. I don't know. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Things aren't feeling right, and it may be a little bit challenging. That's okay. What emotions, if you can think of, that when you're describing your day or waking up in the morning?
I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of going between kind of just sad and kind of blah.
Okay.
And I mean, I just don't look forward to the day like I used to.
Okay, so sad, black,
Yeah.
and I don't want to make any assumptions here. You said it's harder to wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
so how would you describe your sleep quality lately?
I mean, I'm still sleeping, but I'm definitely sleeping more.
Okay.
I find it that I'm like hitting the snooze button more, and it's almost like I'm sleeping almost another hour or two.
Okay, so in your case, not that you're getting less sleep, you're
Yeah.
sleeping more.
Yeah.
So no problem falling asleep
Yeah.
and staying asleep,
Yeah.
but you're not getting up as early as you typically would be.
Yeah.
Okay. And this may seem obvious, but I just want to check too. How would you describe your energy throughout the day?
That's something that's definitely been kind of deteriorating lately. I can kind of like feel it. It's just like even right now. I mean, I had a full day of work, and yeah, I should feel a little tired after a day of work,
Right.
but not this tired. This is something that's kind of new that I really haven't felt this drained.
Okay, makes sense. Let's see, we talked about your mood a little bit. You mentioned sad, kind of blah. That's a good start for us. One of the other things I just want to bring to your attention as well is a few other things on the referral. There used to be things that you sort of enjoyed doing and not so much anymore.
Yeah.
Could you describe that a little bit more for me?
I mean, like one of the big things that I really, really enjoyed was bringing my dog to the dog park. That's something that, I mean, I still bring him for walks, but putting him into the car, driving 10 minutes to the local dog park, I just can't do that anymore. And that was one of my most favorite things to do. That was like kind of a private thing. But, I mean, sometimes I don't even like going out to hang out with my friends anymore either. And so I think those are two of the things that really bother me lately.
So, spending time with your dog,
Yeah.
friends. You mentioned your girlfriend as well. How was that going with her?
I mean, it's been tough lately. I mean, she's really supportive of me, but she was one of the people that really pushed me to get into therapy because it was kind of taking a toll on her too. I mean, she's my girlfriend. She's not my therapist.
Mm-hmm. Right. How would you say your concentration is at work?
That's one of the things that I have really been having a lot of difficulty with. That something that before would take me 10 minutes is taking me closer to 20, 30 minutes now. I'm taking more breaks throughout the day to try and get my thoughts straight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really kind of, no one at work has really noticed, but I can notice because, I mean, something like I just said, I mean, it should only take me 10 minutes, it's taking me almost half an hour. It doesn't feel good for me.
So you know for a fact, just based on doing routine things at work, certain things take a certain amount of time, and it's doubling or tripling the time to get through it.
Yeah, so like I work for HR, and so I do a lot of job postings and just going on to like monster.com, just putting up a job listing. I mean, that was something that was quick and easy for me now, and it feels like a chore in that I just can't do it as quick. I kind of mess up the process. I'm making little mistakes, and it's just not the same quality that I'm used to.
It's hard to focus. Yeah. Not necessarily stay on task, but you can initiate it, but it just takes a while to get these things done. One thing that we mentioned a little bit before coming in the referral question that I definitely want to tap into a little bit. You said not always, but sometimes you, especially when you kind of, to use your words, ruminate, you feel worthless. Could you explain that a little bit?
I mean, I think one of the biggest areas that I see that is at work. And so, I mean, if someone declines an offer letter that I give them, I take that very personally, that I made a decision and it was the wrong one, and I feel worthless because of that. And I take it really personally, and it's really hard for me to kind of move past that. When I find someone that's a really good candidate, I'm really excited. I tell my superiors about it, and then it all falls apart, and then it comes back on me.
It feels like it all falls apart. Huh?
Yeah.
So worthless in terms of getting your job done or being efficient at your job?
And I mean, sometimes, like even around the house, too, I kind of feel worthless. I mean, my girlfriend, she's been supportive, but I can see, because we kind of get into little arguments about the work I do around the house. I haven't been helping out as much, and I'm aware of that, because it's harder for me to do some of the things that I would do before. Like, I was usually the one doing the laundry and the dishes, and now there are piles everywhere in the house, pretty much, and it's tough. And I mean, I can do it sometimes during the week. Like, I'll be able to do it for like an hour or so and get a good chunk done. But to do it again is almost impossible. To kind of keep up with it, that I let it pile up and pile up and pile up until it's like I can't ignore it anymore, and then I do something about it.
It sounds kind of overwhelming to some degree as well. It seems like, too, just basically getting some of these tasks done.
Yeah.
You mentioned at work, at least you're getting it done, but it takes some time. But you've noted in other areas of your life, like at home, maybe some tasks aren't even getting done, or too late, or to the point where, like you mentioned yourself, it piles up a little bit. One of the things, I've been just focusing on your symptoms because it's important for me to help get a diagnosis, but some of the things that you mentioned seem to fit very well with the cognitive behavioral model to help you work through some of these things. For example, those activities, I can imagine, things that you really enjoy and you can't do. We're going to help you kind of work on some of those things. The work, the concentration, and obviously we just want you to feel better, get things done, and be more productive. Before moving on, a little bit of kind of getting a little bit historical on the depression inventory that I had you fill out earlier. You were clear that you noted that you haven't had any thoughts of suicide, and just to be clear, that means you haven't had any thoughts to be blunt, to take your own life or anything like that. Just wanted to verbally clarify. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. But you did notice a little bit, this one thing that's important for me as a cognitive behavioral therapist is there were a couple indicators where you noted not feeling so hopeful. We haven't talked about the history of your depression yet, but you kind of made a note there that this is the first time you started having that particular emotions or thoughts. And I want to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, now, the more that I think about it, I realize that I have kind of had times like these where I kind of feel a little down. But this is one of the times where, like, it's like that rut that I feel like I'm actually not getting out of.
Okay.
Because, like, when I was in high school, I mean, every once in a while I'd feel down, but after a couple of weeks I'd hang out with some friends, and then I kind of snap out of it almost, that I'd be able to just, pull myself up by the bootstraps and feel better. But this time around, it's kind of lingering almost 2, 3 times as long, and it just feels so exhausting that I'm kind of wondering, is this gonna get better? Because before it kind of stopped pretty quickly, but this time it's lingering, and I'm thinking to myself, is this something that's gonna change?
So you've had these, to use the words we used before, depressive episodes before.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an exact time frame, but this particular episode, the funk, the rut that you're in, could you kind of guesstimate a little bit how long this particular episode has been lasting?
I mean, this one, at least over a month or 2 now.
Okay. 1 to 2 months, okay. And again, I know this is just based on memory, but in the past, how long would you kind of guess? You said you were able to snap yourself out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was in high school, it would be like a week or 2.
Okay.
And then, like, one of the things that I would, thinking back to it, I would hang out with my friends. That would be one of the best ways for me to snap out back then. But that's something I haven't been able to do as much recently. I mean, with work, everyone else is working. It's just something that I haven't been able to put as much time in as I would like.
Okay. And you did mention since high school, you're in about your mid-20s now, working full-time, high school, adolescence.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to remember the exact details, but when about do you remember looking back kind of, I've been like this before. I know it's different now, but looking back, you've had these episodes before.
I mean, I would at least say that it probably started like my sophomore year of high school.
Sophomore, okay.
I mean, it did continue in college, but again, I still kind of had a little bit more free time. I had more friends, kind of a little bit more freedom to do things, and so I was able to kind of snap out of it. But I mean, now that I'm working, I have more responsibilities at home, outside the home. It's not as easy, and it's just not getting better.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you've had periods of moments of depressive episodes in and out since sophomore year of high school through college up to the present.
Yeah.
But presently, you feel like the duration of these episodes have been much longer.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why you've been feeling, or maybe questioning the hope it'll get better, is because it seems like from your description, the depression not only lasting longer, but it seems to be more intense. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but more on your shoulders. Is that?
Yeah, and I would definitely say that that's right. I mean, just kind of like the weight of it almost, that it's pulling me down harder. Like when I was in high school and college, I was more kind of sad, but now it's the concentration, it's the sleeping late, I'm getting into more arguments with my girlfriend. Like, I'm not sure if that's related, but I can definitely, I just feel worse.
Right. And if I could take a little bit of a clinical guess, this may seem obvious when I say it, but it's just not, obviously the length of the episodes, the intensity too, but it's been since sophomore year, age 10, 12, 13 years, you've been having these episodes on and off, and that can take a toll on one, both mentally and physically over time. So it sounds like you're looking for a change, and that's one thing. I know you're saying the word hopeless, and I sincerely understand where you're coming from, but I also give you credit too, that there must be a little bit of hope inside of you, because you called me and scheduled an appointment. So there's a part of you that still feels like change is still possible.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, I have a lot of support around me, and I think a lot of that hope does come from my girlfriend, where she is able to say, like, hey, look, you've been able to snap out of this before, you just have to put the work in. And I'm not quite sure about that yet, but I'm here.
You're willing to give it a shot. Right, and it sounds like she's supportive of you coming here as well.
She is.
One thing before we move on, I just wanted to get maybe a better picture. You've mentioned a few times like friends and social life. Could you kind of describe, maybe in general, your friendships, what they're like, kind of what they have been like, and how do they change over this past episode?
Well, I mean, ever since, even elementary school, I've always had, this one good core group of friends. I was never really, the most popular kid, but I had this group of 5 friends that I could
Since elementary school?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's really something special, but unfortunately, going to college, a couple of people have gone on to graduate school, a couple of people are, crazy jobs now, and it just has kind of fallen apart. But, to go back to our actual friendship, we would spend the weekends together, Friday, Saturday night. We would play video games. We would go out in the backyard and play baseball, soccer, football, all sorts of things.
So physically active.
Yeah. But now that we're older, once we got into college, it was more kind of like the partying, kind of oh, let's go have a couple beers and stuff. And after graduating, and now that we have jobs, it just hasn't been as frequent as I would like it. I kind of miss the old days where, I'd walk down the dorm room hallway and see all my friends. But now I have to drive 30 minutes. I have to pick up the phone. I have to text them and try and hunt them down. And it's just tough to kind of make that extra effort when I'm already feeling so down to try and reach out to them.
It sounds like, excuse me, one of your really good effective coping skills when you were younger is you're able to reach out and get that social support.
Yeah.
And life kind of evolves in a way where as we get older, significant others, jobs, and some of us have really busy jobs, that ability or option to use that coping skill gets a little bit harder.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to have those outlets. And so part of it, I think, naturally in life, it's made it a little bit more challenging to reach out. And has it been even harder now with the depressive episode? It sounds like you still have some friends, but have you been able to kind of pick up the phone to kind of say, hey, let's...
I've been thinking about it, but now that I'm in this rut, I almost feel like I'd kind of be pulling on them, kind of like I've been pulling on my girlfriend, that I'd kind of pull them down.
Okay. You don't want to be a burden to them? But you haven't tried, though, recently.
No,
that's okay.
Not for a while.
That's okay. It just helped me to kind of... I think that's something, too, not right away, but eventually we can kind of work on that too as well. I think one area that's going to be helpful for you right off the bat is increasing some of those social activities for you. It seems like it's something that you value, and it also seems to be connected to some of those pleasurable activities that you used to enjoy as well. We can help you out with that. I don't want to belabor it too much, but I just want to clarify. You mentioned, I think we got a good feeling for your work, and even some of your tasks at home, and we're going to talk more about that later. I want to, you mentioned how your girlfriend's supportive of you, but you also feel like that your depression is kind of affecting that relationship. And you highlighted a few things, but could you, again, kind of paint a little bit more of a detailed picture of how your relationship is now?
I mean, we've been going out together for 3 years now.
Okay.
It's going to be 4 pretty soon. She's always been really supportive of me. I've always been really supportive of her. But, I mean, when it comes down to, like, these ruts that I've been in, it's just, she could put up with it for a little while. I mean, she's aware of it. I mean, she can tell when I'm not myself. And it's really tough for her. And she is one of the people that tried to get me into therapy. She tried for a couple times. I mean, this is the time that I've actually decided to come in. She's thrown out the idea a couple times before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's tried to get me to at least think about it. But since this most recent rut, I think that she definitely was onto something. But, I mean, I think, kind of like I said earlier, I've been arguing with her more. I mean, she's like, okay, Mark, the dishes are piling up. Like, that's your chore. I mean, we kind of have like a little contract up on the refrigerator of whose chores whose, and I mean that. Like,
so it's pretty clear whose responsibility is.
I mean, she's right, but it's just so hard for me to get it started sometimes, and that it's not until it's piling, and I mean, there's not literally flies going around it, but I mean, it's not until it's that point that I'm like, okay, like I really actually have to do this now, and so, I mean, I still feel emotionally connected to her, but I can see how this rut is just kind of taking a toll on our relationship. I mean, we've been arguing. I mean, I don't think we've been as close to one another emotionally as I would like, and it's just, I don't know, it's another area where I just feel like this rut is really affecting me.
Well, it seems like one of the areas where you guys are having these arguments, as you put it, is getting certain tasks done. And that could be it. And it's okay if the answer is no. Is there any other things or events that you guys feel like you have some friction, or how your relationship's being affected?
I mean, like, one of the things, I mean, we've been trying to go out for date nights lately.
Okay.
And, like, I haven't really been, I think I've been the one that's been bad about it, where we make plans, and then I say that I'm not in the mood for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
so she wants to go out and do something, and maybe it's even scheduled in, and then the time comes to head out that evening or that day, and you're
just so exhausted from, like, the whole day, that carrying that weight around. And this is something that has been even worse recently, that I have to say, like, I can't go. And that even makes it worse, because I know how much that hurts her.
It hurts her, and probably doesn't feel too good yourself, right? And being active in doing because it's something you enjoy, and now that's one less thing or activity to do together as a couple. So I can definitely see how this is taking a toll over time, of the things we've discussed earlier, and now this has been very helpful for us to kind of understand, as we discuss a little bit your what I would say diagnosis of depression that we spoke a little bit to as well. This information will definitely be helpful to kind of generate a treatment plan, which we'll discuss later, and some goals and interventions. But there are some other questions that I want to discuss as you move on, such as your motivation level, and also those measurements that you took. I mentioned the depression inventory and the hopelessness scale. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, great, thanks, Mark. So, Mark, what I want to do here is, we've talked about your depression. You've had multiple episodes, right, and you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut right now. What I want to talk a little bit about is, maybe, if we can, it's not always clear, it's always multiple events, but sometimes there's patterns that kind of starts or triggers, or just anything that comes to your mind when these depressive episodes happen.
I mean, I think, like, one of the things is that, like, I definitely feel really lonely.
Okay.
And, like, I think that's, like, especially, like, back in high school, where, like, I'd see, like, my friends post something up on Facebook that I wasn't a part of, and then I'd feel really bad about that, and I'd feel really lonely, like, kind of like, why wasn't I invited? Why wasn't I included on this, and I don't know. It's just I think those were kind of one of the first couple times that I definitely felt the little ruts. It was because I was really isolated, and I think that's why one of the reasons why when I actually spent time with my friends, I felt better.
Right, makes sense in a lot of ways.
I mean, even thinking about it right now, it makes sense to me. So I don't know. I think that's one of the things that kind of when I was younger. But I think one of the things right now that's just really been tough for me is just like kind of all the work that I do at work. I mean, it's just like it's. I mean, it is a reflection of myself, but I take it really hard, and it just kind of keeps whacking me down. That I just feel awful when I'm not able to get a job posting up in time, when I'm not able to get someone hired in time, when I need to fill a position that is essential to like a couple of the residential programs, and I know how important that is for all the clients there. And I mean, I take it all really heavily, and I think that's one of the things that's really been contributing to kind of where I am right now.
So in the past, especially the loneliness with the friends, the social media, obviously that's still present now, but it sounds like also the work, currently the more recent episodes are really triggering some of these depressive episodes as well. How about your relationship too?
I mean, I think when I think about our relationship, the big things that is just when we just kind of aren't connecting the same way that we used to, whether it's kind of me being short with her, if it's her kind of spending more time with her friends because she doesn't want to be around me because it's so hard for her to kind of be present with me sometimes.
Right. Okay. So this all kind of ties into some of the stuff we spoke about before, but it helps kind of paint a clearer picture for me of maybe what are some of the precipitating or initiating events. And I realize it's more complicated than that, but sometimes there are certain events that kind of bring this stuff to the surface a little bit. What I'd like to talk a little bit related to this is what you've done either in the past or in the present to help cope with this. For example, the loneliness or the work or the relationship, to kind of see the details of how that plays into your depression.
I mean, I think one of the best things was spending time with people. I mean, when I was younger, that would always be my go-to way to snap out of kind of a tough week is to spend time with people. I mean, most recently, I think spending time with my dog has been one of the most helpful things. It's kind of like lets me get out of the house. I'm not looking at the piles of clothes, the piles of dishes. I'm not getting into arguments with Melissa. It's just me and the dog walking. So I think that's something that's able to kind of let me kind of cope with some of the emotions I'm going through right now.
But it does sound like recently it's been tough to even get out with the dog.
Yeah, I mean, it's walking him around the house as opposed to actually going to the dog park. And I mean, I made some friends when I was there.
Right,
a couple good
at
people.
The park, right.
And I mean, I don't even see them anymore. So it's just not. I feel like I can't quite cope that way anymore. I mean, I feel like I'm more kind of like withdrawing to kind of going upstairs and playing video games all night as opposed to actually trying to do something active. It's more I'm just kind of secluding myself and just kind of shutting out the outside world.
So that would say the positive side is your coping is to, like you said more than a few times, go out and do something with your friends, your wife, your dog. On the flip side is it sounds like some of your other, for lack of a better word, coping, but maybe not so effective coping skills has been a little bit more on the withdrawal.
Yeah.
I bet you feels a little bit okay to play video games, but in the long term it's like, but I didn't go out with my wife or hang out with my friends, or I didn't go to the park and socialize with other people.
And that was one of the tough things too, is I mean, back in high school, I was playing these games with my friends. Yep. So, I mean, every once in a while I've been able to play with them and kind of keep in touch. But now it's more just kind of, like you said, withdrawing, seclusion.
Right. In college or when you're younger, even, people joke, video games, blah, 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 but you're socializing. Yeah. That's what some guys into socialize, but you don't have that as much anymore. What about in terms of work? It sounds like you still... Some things clearly are not working like they used to, but to give you credit, you're still getting the job done. So it sounds like you got some coping skills that are effective and others that maybe are...
Yeah, I mean, with work, I think talking to my supervisor, she's really supportive as well, and she's able to kind of advocate, or to get me to advocate for myself. So I mean, if I need to go take a quick walk, that's something that's really been helpful at work. Is we have this really nice, beautiful grounds that the building is on, very calming. I'm able to go walk, do a quick lap around there, and then come inside and just kind of breathe and relax a little bit. But I don't know. It's just been tough to find something that really works when I'm at work. I mean, I can't leave. I mean, sometimes I've thought about leaving.
Just going home.
That it's been such a tough day, and I'm just so down that like why am I here? Like what's the point of being here?
I'd say it sounds like it's good that you have a supportive supervisor. You have that outlet to kind of cope in the short term, but some of the things we discussed before about that rumination or being so hard on yourself is also what's making it hard.
Yeah. And part of it too is, I mean, I don't want to go to her too much, and I mean, they haven't really noticed. I mean, I noticed that my work isn't as good as it used to be. They haven't. They're being supportive of me, but I don't really want to bring too much attention to it where I'm just going to her for support at work. Like, I want to try and find something that I can do.
Okay, that's understandable. So you're trying to find that balance between the two. Okay. One thing that I'd like to do, you've done a great job, kind of explaining to me some of these examples and scenarios, the symptoms of your depressive episodes. What I'd like to do, if it's possible, maybe an event that's recently happened over the past couple of days. When we walked in, you said it's been a rough couple of days. So what helps me a little bit to kind of understand how these thoughts and these emotions and these behaviors, you may not be aware of, but even with not doing something is still an action, right? Inaction is a choice. So maybe if you can kind of give me that example of something that's happened the past couple of days that's been kind of, as you describe, eating away at you.
Well, I mean, what comes right to mind is I tried to hang out with my buddy George this weekend.
Okay.
Like, again, he's one of those guys from that group of elementary school friends that I've been friends with forever, but I mean, we've kind of been going our separate ways recently. I mean, he's really busy. He's like an investment banker. I tried calling him the other day, and I got him. Typically, sometimes it goes to voicemail, but I got him, and he was short with me. I mean, I would think that if he had called me, I would have been like, "Oh, hey George, how's it going?" Instead, all I got was like, "Hey Mark, like, I can't really talk too much right now. Is this important? Can I get back to you?" And that was really tough for me to hear, because I wanted to ask him if he wanted to go watch the latest HBO show. And I mean, we love Game of Thrones. We love it. And I just was so down that he wouldn't even hear me out to what I even wanted to talk about. It was, I don't have enough time for you. That's what I heard.
He didn't say that though, right?
He said he didn't have time right now. Okay. But you're right. But that's how I took it.
Kind of personally. I know she also said, well, if it was me, this is how I would have responded.
Yeah.
But it wasn't you, it was him, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things we'll talk about is maybe some assumptions were made there a little bit, but I can definitely understand your emotions based upon how you perceive that event. It seems like to give you some credit, it took you some courage.
Yeah.
It's been a while since you've hung out or done anything with him. You finally got a hold of him on the phone, and he's like, I'm too busy for you. Yeah. And so all these thoughts, and I've already noticing a little bit of a theme here in terms of when you're at work, when you do the job postings, and you said yourself you kind of personalize it, internalize it. And then over here was his name George, was it?
George.
Really busy, right? And he told you he was busy, but it still was tough for you to kind of really personalize it. And you haven't heard back from him yet or anything like that.
I mean, he said that he was going to call me the next day. Right. He never did. I never called him again because, I mean, I took his word for it.
Right. And sometimes it sounds like we fill in that ambiguity with our own thoughts or perceptions, right? And in this case, with your depressive episode, you kind of not only personalizing it, but kind of making a negative perception of it. So that's one thing something we can kind of work on, as well as some of those assumptions or personalizing some things. We're kind of assuming what one thinks when we don't really know, right? Maybe he'll call you in a day or two and say, "Look, Mark, I was really busy. Let's do it." But in the moment, you're not thinking that way at all. No. How would you describe your? I know it sounds obvious, but what were your emotions after you hung up that phone and?
I mean, it feels kind of silly to even say it that I cried after it. I mean, I mean, that's something that's been happening more too. It's like I've been crying more, and I didn't think that I would have such a powerful reaction to something like that. I mean, looking back on it, yeah, it's not too big of a deal, but I mean, I basically just shut down for the rest of the day. I went and laid down and just hung out in my room.
Okay. And to be fair to you, understanding the way you perceive that event, I can see why you would feel sad. I mean, this is a relationship that you value. You took the courage to finally make that phone call. You were doing the right thing to reach out and socialize, and at the moment it felt like a rejection, right? And you kind of already went to the next step, which is good. With cognitive behavioral therapy, we talk about the thoughts. We'll definitely talk more about these kind of automatic thought patterns, right? One you already mentioned, you're ahead of the game, is it's a cognitive distortion called personalization, where basically we don't have all the information in, but we tend to internalize and sometimes think what others may be thinking, when in fact maybe we don't have all the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that, but the emotions are very real. And then the behaviors, how we like to look at those related. And just to clarify for me, it says that you didn't call him back, and then what, you withdrew for the rest of the day or two, or what did that consist of?
I mean, again, kind of the video games.
Okay.
I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, it was the weekend. That was time that I could have spent with Melissa too.
Okay.
And so I kind of shut her out as well.
Okay. That's good insight on your part. So it didn't just affect the relationship, your response to your friend. It also affected your relationship with your girlfriend over the weekend. So you ended up not doing anything over that weekend.
Yeah, so it was kind of a wash.
Yeah. And she probably wasn't too happy about that either.
And I mean, she was going to come out with George and I. And so, I mean, we were going to have a nice night. And
so you kind of even made some plans in your head.
I mean, we were going to watch some TV and then go out and have a good dinner. And I mean, we didn't do that. I mean, we just stayed home and made some crappy dinner. And I mean, I say crappy because, I mean, like, I cooked. I actually, like, that was one thing that I was able to actually kind of break out of the funk at night. That's one of the things, I guess, kind of thinking about it, that I've been able to get some enjoyment out of around the house when I'm with Melissa. Just cooking with her. I mean, she kind of tells me what to put in the food, and I cook it. Doesn't really come out too well.
You're like a sous chef or something?
Yeah, kind of like that. But I mean, that was kind of it kind of peaked at the end of the night. I mean, it wasn't a complete wash. There was some good parts to it.
I was going to say, it's some good insight on your part. Yeah, it didn't go as planned. You didn't go out with George. And maybe in theory you could have gone out with your wife. But it sounds like at least there was some effort on both of your parts to make the best of it. It sounds like you did something. You cooked. You did something together, a shared activity. Did you guys at least watch the HBO movie Game of Thrones?
No.
You just so you had the dinner but didn't do the movie. And so it was. I would kind of challenge you a little bit. It wasn't a complete waste or gone of a weekend. There was still some to it. So instead of like an either or, all or nothing, like completely horrible or really great, it was probably somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the gray. So kind of stinky, but wasn't a disaster perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I kind of like cooking now. I mean, it's one of the last things that I think we've been really enjoying doing together. And granted, it makes all the dishes that I don't do, but it's still something that we enjoy doing together.
And so focusing on the positive is that you still have something that you guys can enjoy. And that's good. That's something we can try to implement into some of the behavioral and cognitive work that we'll do. So, okay. So what I'd like to do, the next step, Mark, is to take a look at those assessments that we worked on. We'll talk a little bit about kind of your motivation and expectation for therapy, and then we'll kind of talk about that depression and hopelessness scale that you completed. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good.
All right, good.